Welcome back to our workshop session. We have council members Clay, Allen, and Taylor present. So we do have a quorum, and we will move forward with the first item on our workshop agenda, which is a public hearing to receive comments on the adoption of the proposed millage rate for fiscal year 2021-2022. This is the first of 3 public hearings scheduled to receive public comments. And if you would like to log in to have an opportunity to speak on our millage rate for the upcoming year, you can go right ahead. Ms. Moore will give you a little bit of information about how to do that.
Good evening. If you go to www.collegeparkga.com, you will then click on in the green tab at the top, Government, and then go down to Council Meetings. Once you go to Council Meetings, there is a side panel where you can click the City Council agenda for workshop. So click on Workshop Sessions. Then you would go to the year 2021 to click on the council agenda for October 4th, 2021. You would then click the link in that agenda. Once you click the link, you will need to raise your hand to be acknowledged. Once you are acknowledged, you will be asked to unmute your mic, and you can then leave your public comment for the millage rate item.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moore. If there is anyone on the call that wishes to be heard during this public hearing, go ahead and raise your hand. At this time, I will go ahead and declare the public hearing open. And we'll give people a couple of minutes here because that connection to those number of steps take a few minutes to get together. But in the meantime, I think it is a good opportunity to discuss the fact that we are not increasing the millage rate. That is not the proposal. The proposal is to maintain the same millage rate of 12.619 mils. And if you take a look at our workshop agenda packet, you will see that pursuant to Georgia code, we need to advertise this in a particular way, but the millage rate itself is not increasing. So we'll give people a couple more minutes just to have the opportunity to log on. And as I said before, the public hearing, this is the first of 3. We will be doing public hearings on, let me scroll to the date. We'll be doing 2 more of these. We will be doing them on, we'll be doing another on Monday, October 18th at 7:30. Do we already have the one on September 20th?
I thought it was at 6 o'clock on the 18th.
Mayor, it has to be at 6 o'clock.
Okay. All right. The press release that we put out says 7:30. So please excuse my error. That is Monday, October 18th at 6 o'clock p.m. So hopefully we corrected that before it went out in the press release.
Yeah, Mayor, we have a correction on the agenda. We pushed the public hearings back. This is the
That's
first.
Right. This is the first. I was going to say, I don't remember
You're
having
correct.
another one. So,
No, you're correct.
Today is the first. We're going to October 18th at 6 o'clock and then November 1st at 7:30. Is that correct?
Yes,
Am I
ma'am.
reading that all correctly? All right.
Yes, ma'am. Because that's the commission will vote on the adopting the millage rate at that time. So it's on the regular agenda on the 1st of November.
Got it. All right. So still not seeing anyone who wishes to speak. If you do wish to speak on this particular issue, going to give you one last opportunity to go ahead and raise your hand. But as I said, we will have 2 other opportunities to discuss this issue in 2 more public hearings on October 18th at 6 and November 1st at 7:30. So at this time, as I do not see or hear anyone who wishes to comment, I will declare the public hearing closed, and we will go ahead and move to item number 2, which is a review of a proposed ordinance for pedicabs.
Hi, everybody. This is a pullover from the workshop item we had on pedicabs 2 meetings back. We went over it with the attorney and we came up with the ordinance that's in your packets. I did have a couple slides for this, I think, Chevelle, if you have them. Are they on this thing? If not, it's okay. I can pull them up, or they're just a basic overview of what's included in that ordinance. So if you guys have any questions for me, I know Councilman Clay, you had a few things you wanted to discuss during this time, and I know that Dr. Chisula, who was kind of the champion of this, I believe he was gonna join. I'm not sure if he is on or not.
I don't see him, but that was a quick scroll through that I did.
A
Does
couple
anyone
of
have any
questions.
questions for? Okay, all right, Councilman Allen, go right ahead.
You know, on page 22, it talks about third party advertising. Do we need to limit that to say no political advertising, because people can get a little bit out of hand? I don't know if we want to get into that at all, or do we want to say that they can put advertising for political office on the side of the cabs? Or
I had
just a
not-
thought.
I had not thought of that, but definitely willing to put it in if that's the.
If we
Or
can
any,
legally do
or
that.
any negative political advertising, you know, or any, you know.
Well, we gotta be
Councilman.
careful.
We're
Yeah.
sort of going into some freedom of speech stuff. aren't
Yeah, I
we?
was just about to say that. Sorry.
Go right ahead, Mr. Denmark.
Yes, ma'am. I was going to say that, you know, getting into the content-based regulation of speech would be difficult. And the law tends to give less protection to commercial speech historically, but even with those lessened constitutional protections, I still don't think we could get away with a kind of a content-based restriction like that. We may be able to do something, but we would have to tread very, very lightly.
Oh, okay. It was just a thought that came across. Also soliciting passengers, if they do continue to solicit passengers, when I go to a city that has pedicabs, they usually have people that are soliciting pretty hard. So I don't know. Nikki, do we have any enforcement in there? If they do not, what's going to happen if they continue to solicit?
I think that becomes I would say that becomes a police issue and a harassment issue that we would have our police officers enforce, just as we would have them enforce this ordinance. This is going into chapter 16, streets and traffic, so I believe it would fall under their jurisdiction. I'm not sure that we can. Are you asking like what's the punishment, I guess?
Are we gonna, who's gonna cite them? I guess, is code enforcement gonna cite them? Is police gonna cite them? Who's gonna cite them for continuing to solicit if they do? I mean, they might not even do that, but if they do, like I've seen in a lot of cities, they tend to solicit pretty hard at people walking down the street.
Yeah, I would think it would be the police. I think we wouldn't have code enforcement get involved in this, since this is going to be a streets and traffic issue.
Okay, and the last.
But do we need to have it in there? Should we have that in the ordinance? I think
We
that-
do. Under
yeah,
section
yeah.
16-99, it says that
No
any
soliciting.
violations, well, no soliciting is up in section,
It's
Right.
in here.
it's in
Uh,
there. And then the penalties are further down, and they relate to section 1.1-8 of our code. And basically any violation would be a misdemeanor.
Okay. Okay. And the last comment that I had was on some of the streets, you say Virginia and the Bobby Brown Parkway, and I think Bobby Brown's in East Point. So we need to make sure that the cities are in College Park, or are they going to be allowed to go outside of College Park? Do we have that?
Well, we can't legislate outside of College Park
No,
anyhow, so
no.
we shouldn't mention it. Yeah, I had that same issue with Bobby Brown.
Well, it says Norman Berry as well. We just need to look at that to make sure those are within the city limits,
Right. They've got a statement in there, John Kelvin on Main Street. That's makes no sense. But Ken, I added that we should have a diagram in here. That was one of the points I made. At one point, Dr. Chisuto did have a diagram that showed some of the streets. I think it's a lot easier to understand, don't you?
That
Yeah,
might be
def-
something.
sorry.
I apologize, Ms. Washington. Go right ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yes, I have a note. The attorney that was helping me with writing this up, I let her know that we wanted to do that, and she confirmed that we could definitely put a diagram.
Would it be helpful if that was done with the help of, say, someone with, I don't want to put people on the spot or give them more work, but someone with GIS capability might be easier to.
Yeah, I think, yes, that's the route I'm planning to take. Shouldn't be too difficult. I think that we have done something similar for Jackson before, so and maybe for this actually also when we were discussing it. So,
Nikki, did you get an answer back from Winston on my question about people who might be out on bail?
I did not. So it's on my list for our legal meeting tomorrow. But unless
Okay,
Winston
well,
feels confident he can answer it now, I also have
Yeah.
the making it a temporary option, or how that would work.
Right. Well, let me bring them both of
Not
those
sure if
up.
we want to.
then.
Okay.
Yeah, Winston, on packet page 21, item E, we say you can't have a conviction of a crime involving physical violence, et cetera, et cetera. And my thought was, well, what about someone who has committed a crime, allegedly? They're out on bail. So now we run into the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. But do we want somebody who is out on bail, convicted of some kind of a crime like that, running our pedicabs? And how do you address that?
Well, sir, you can, it is a dicey proposition because yes, they have not been convicted, but obviously the criminal conviction standards beyond a reasonable doubt. And for our purposes of our ordinances, we're not trying to delve in a criminal matter. We're looking at it from an administrative and civil perspective, which generally has a lower standard applicable. So we can limit it, even though the person has not been convicted. That may not be popular, but for instance, in an employment context, if someone were accused of a crime and even acquitted, well, an employer could still terminate that employee based on that, because even though you were not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, by a preponderance of the evidence, we think you did it. There's enough evidence to meet that standard, which would be enough in a civil context. We often see it in the case where someone's acquitted on the criminal side, but they're found to be civilly liable. The case that comes to mind is the O.J. Simpson matter, where he was acquitted on the criminal side, but found liable to the Goldman family. So we're not beholden to a criminal law standard, is I guess the short way of saying it.
Can you work, if everybody agrees with that I would be embarrassed, to say the least, if we were having pedicab drivers that were out on bail for some kind of a crime against people running our pedicabs. I think that would be an issue. And I would like that to get worked in there somehow, that we can, if we can prevent it, that we can prevent it. I don't know whether anybody else cares, but I care.
I hear what you were saying. I think I think the presumption of innocence is an important one as well. Is there an opportunity for us to require notification if someone has been charged with a crime, and then sort of take a look at the totality of the circumstances, as opposed to making a blanket um, a blanket statement that someone's license permit could be, would be suspended. But this one says can be suspended for the following reasons, but.
Could the company suspend the person until the outcome?
Well, sometimes the outcome of cases takes years.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in our current environment. I mean, people aren't really even spending much time unless it's a really high level charge. People aren't spending much time in places like the Fulton County Jail because A, there's no space, B, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and C, it's the Fulton County Jail. So, I mean, somebody could have a case pending for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's a sensitive issue because there is, we proclaim ourselves as being innocent until proven guilty. And yet somehow it just doesn't feel good that you would want somebody running your pedicab that had that problem. So that's why I bring it up. I don't have,
Sure.
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't have a good answer.
I mean, but we could have someone who was charged with family violence, and then it was found that perhaps they weren't the aggressor, or, perhaps it was a mutual combat issue, something along those lines. And so
I think it's hard to enforce. I don't know.
I understand. I absolutely understand your concerns, Councilman Clay. Like, we don't want, if someone's been accused of, say, snatching a woman off the street and raping her in an alley, but is operating a pedicab and we don't know that, that's a problem. I'm with you on that. I think
that's a problem with a regular cab though, too, right?
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's a problem with your
So
Uber
how
driver.
is it handled? How do we handle, how not we, but how does a private cab company handle it?
And this is taken directly from Savannah, is that right?
Yes.
Mostly, yeah, modeled after Savannah.
Okay. So is this what their language in
Yeah.
regard to this particular issue, the operator's permit and the reasons for suspension?
Yes.
Okay. Do we know of any issues Savannah has had with people with unsavory issues in their past?
I do not, but I can look into it.
I think maybe Winston and Nikki need to think about how you might handle this, because the example I think that Ken brought up, an employer. I know that we had issues when I worked in industry. You could get yourself in trouble just by bringing questionable reputation to the company.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That leads me to a second thing that I think we need to talk about. And by the way, I am all for this pedicab. I totally support it. I've been working with Dr. Chisulo on it, so I should not be taken as somebody who is against it. I just want to make sure it works and works really well, because I think it's a great idea. The other thing that occurred to me was there are issues like in there about not impeding traffic, for example, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm thinking is, I would like to see that if there's a way to conditionally approve the ordinance as a trial. In other words, we say, we're going to implement this ordinance. It's good for 90 days, or it's good for 180 days. And at that time, we evaluate whether it needs to be adjusted. Something to that effect. And we maybe put a moratorium for example, if it turned out that this was really clogging traffic, it was causing all sorts of problems that we hadn't anticipated, then, but we've got this ordinance on the books. If we set it up as a trial, then we can say, well, it didn't work out the way we had hoped it would work out, so we kill the ordinance. Can we do that? Just a thought.
Mr. Denmark?
Yeah, we're going to run into vested rights issues. Individuals will claim that they spent money or resources in order to operate this business. Then we pulled the rug out from under them and left them holding the bag. We could, in the kind of provisional ordinance, say that no rights will vest and so on and so forth. I still think it would be problematic. Folks would still make the claim. So I think it would be very difficult to do that.
Who would want to make that investment?
Yeah, well, I mean, it would not be a smart move to make, but what I'm suggesting is that the possibility exists that someone they would be betting on to come. Well, I hope they'll renew it after this trial period. This is worst case scenario, and I tend to think worst case scenario, not best case scenario. I guess it's just kind of an occupational thing, but that's something that we would contend with. And as I said, they would make the argument. I'm not satisfied how successful the argument would be, but I'm just saying what we might encounter on the back end.
What if we were to do something like we did with the container when we modified our code to allow containers, and then simultaneously we put a moratorium on anyone else coming in for 90 days. We know that Dr. Chusulu and the other company whose name I can't remember want to do this. They're planning to start small. It's in my mind, I think of it as a trial. And what's going through it is that if we start a trial with them, and put a moratorium on it at the same time, you have no other investors. There is no other group that would be coming along that would be investing a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, the moratorium piece, I mean, obviously the moratorium suggests that we need more time to evaluate and to do some things
Exactly.
to get our ordinance in order, which would be a curious thing to say when we just enacted the ordinance. So I mean, one could make the argument that we're not imposing the moratorium in good faith. What I would say, Councilman Clay, is I understand and appreciate your concern. There may be a way to accomplish this, but it just would require a little bit of thought on my part as to how to accomplish a short-term evaluation period for this ordinance, for this program, while not allowing rights to vest such that we would be amenable to any type of claims. I think it's doable, and it may not be as complicated as I'm making it sound, but you know, I just tend to be cautious about things like this, because what I don't want is for the city to be sued, whether that suit would be meritorious or not. So I'd want the public to be on fair notice that this is a short-term trial, and that the council would, you know, revisit the matter after 60, 90, 120 days, whatever the council saw fit. And so if everybody went in with their eyes wide open with that understanding, we might be able to craft legislation that accomplishes that while not exposing the city to liability.
I think we need to also be careful about, I mean, I know that this proposal was brought to us by one group, but if someone else wants to do this and is interested in participating in this, I mean, we're not, if we move forward on this, we're not setting up an ordinance for one company. And so we've got to act with that in mind, that, you know, I don't think that we're going to have a dozen people that want to come and do pedicabs in College Park. I think that's highly unlikely. But if we have 2 or 3 that think that this is a good opportunity, then they would have to fall under these same regulations. If it's
Yeah.
good, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else that just occurred to me as you were saying that, Mayor. We had a go bus
Mhm.
several years ago, which was not terribly successful. But the city ran the go bus. We had someone run it for us, but it was a city-sponsored event. What if we, the city, sponsored pedicabs like we did the go bus, and then we employed an operator to operate that? I just throw that out. I don't know that we need to discuss it at this point, but I'm just, that might be another way to get at it.
I am less than lukewarm about that idea, Councilman, but I'm curious about the ideas or the thoughts of the rest of the body.
I'd rather the city not get involved with it right now. You know, it might be something. I would rather the city not get involved. It's going to take a lot of manpower. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of money, and I don't think we have that right now.
Oh, Ken, I didn't, and that's why I just threw it out. I don't know that's a good idea either. But I didn't mean to imply in any way that it would cost us anything. I just meant that we would hire somebody to put the plan in place, the process in place. It's not an ordinance, procedure, whatever you want to call it, and then hire somebody to execute it. And we don't pay anything for it. That was the way I was thinking of it. I don't know whether it works or not. I'm just trying to brainstorm.
Let me mention one other point that just crossed my mind is, you know, when I was looking at the streets and so forth, we need to have something in there, I believe, that says, you know, any street that the city deems unsafe for pedicabs, you know, have something in there that we can take some of these streets off if we deem that it's necessary to not have pedicabs. And I don't know if we have that in there or not. I didn't.
Would that just be an amendment of the ordinance?
Yeah. Yeah, we amend ordinances all the time. That's why I'm saying I really think of this as a trial. I think it's a great idea, fantastic idea, but we've not done anything like this. We don't have anything experience with this. And I can think of different ways that it can go wrong. And if I think long enough, I'm probably going to think of some more. So if there were some way to do this as a trial period without vesting rights, without creating a legal situation, that's where I'd like to go, Winston.
I'm sure we can work it out, Councilman.
All right, any other thoughts, questions, comments? All right, hearing none, we will see everyone in an hour and 1 minute at our regularly scheduled meeting at 7:30. Take care,
Okay.
everybody.